everything ends at contribution margin. It's all in that number. You should measure ad spend against new customer sales and new customer profitability, because that's the reason why we're doing it.
You can allocate a small sliver of time maybe to some retention stuff for certain brands, but I'm skeptical it's often worth it.
If you listen to what we have to say here today and you implement in your business, you're gonna probably be in the top 10, 15%. All right, episode 34, we're back. What's up, Dylan?
Excited to chat again, John. It's always a good way to start the week.
This is gonna be a good one. We're just gonna go right to the point on this one. How to analyze your marketing profitability. That's what we're talking about. And we're gonna get, like, honestly, I don't know, maybe some people will think this is boring. I actually think you should listen up, because we're gonna talk step by step about the core metrics that both Free to Grow and Aplo Group use to assess marketing profitability. And I gotta be honest, not everyone does this. I think there's more people that don't do this than do. And so if you listen to what we have to say here today and you implement in your business, you're gonna probably be in the top 10, 15% of sophistication when it comes to analyzing your marketing profitability. So Dylan, let's dive right in. What's the first most important metric that you think a brand should calculate as a part of assessing marketing profitability?
I mean, contribution margin is probably that. I think that if I can have a little bit of a few variables here, first time in return customer contribution margin is key, and that would basically be made up of your margin at your variable expenses. So generally, that's going to be landed COGS, logistics, so shipping costs incurred, and your payment gateway fees. So basically net sales, and then you strip out the following after that. I think that allows you to set a ROAS target, especially if you're going in for first time customer profitability. That by itself doesn't let you set a ROAS target if you're kind of factoring in lifetime value or lifetime contribution margin. But if I had to pick like one metric, it'd be contribution margin.
For sure. Yeah, agreed. You might have to dig deeper, or you likely will have to dig deeper into the sub metrics, or like the drivers of contribution margin, right? To fully and holistically understand your performance. But everything ends at contribution margin. It's all in that number. You might have to break it down and slice it into different segments, but it all ends up there, right?
Your marketing team's primary objective is to pick the metrics that are most correlated with driving the contribution margin outcome you want to drive, and that will vary by channel. It'll also vary by brand based off of their media mix. But by the end outcome, everyone's kind of working together towards is that. For most brands that we see who are often going to be paid ads dominant, it's usually pretty simple. But if you have like a pretty omni-channel brand, or you have a lot of traffic sources, it does get a little bit more tricky.
Okay, so let's define it. We got contribution margin is revenue minus variable cost. For a typical ecom brand, that's landed product cost, shipping and fulfillment, credit card and or merchant processing fees, and then variable ad spend or variable marketing gives us the contribution margin. Now let's talk about new customer or first-time customer contribution margin versus returning customer contribution margin. Why, in your viewpoint, is it important to separate them?
Because one is very correlated with ad spend, and the other is maybe correlated with ad spend, but not in the same month. So, like for example, if you were spending $1 million on ads in a month and you were to double to $2 million, maybe your new customer revenue increased by 80-90%, depending on how your ads scale. But your return customer revenue probably does not scale even close to that. Now, in reality, ads do have some impact on return customer revenue in the month in which the spend is spent. However, it usually does not scale nearly as much. I'm not going to give like a range, because I think this varies so much brand to brand. But generally, when allocating ad dollars, the primary metric that we're trying to drive is a new customer CPA or ROAS based off of a margin target or a CAC to LTV target. The return customer revenue can be impacted, but generally that's viewed as being primarily driven by non-ad related things, be it natural repurchasing, email and SMS. Ads can play a role, and they play an even bigger role if you look at 8-9 figure brand. But when you're doing like $5 to $50 million a year in sales, there's something in those ranges. oftentimes focusing on those new customer metrics are going to be sufficient and just more productive.
Yeah, I actually had on the Free to Grow CFO podcast, I had my buddy from Store Hero, Carl. I know you've met those guys before. I had him on a couple months ago. And he was actually he said it really well. He's like, look, let's just like put aside whether or not ad spend drives returning customer sales. We believe that fundamentally the purpose of ad spend is to drive new customers. That's the purpose behind it in your strategy. So you should measure ad spend against new customer sales and new customer profitability, because that's
Yeah.
the reason why we're doing it. So even if it does like have a little bit of a halo effect, when you think about the creative and the hooks and how you get someone to click through, the whole journey that the marketing team is creating is a journey that gets a new customer to buy. And so we should fundamentally be measuring that. Do you agree?
Yeah. And I mean, if you were to like, I'll put it this way: if you're going to try and go from spending $1 million a month to $2 million a month, it's probably going to be because it's going to be because you're driving more new customers. Like the
Yeah,
probability, like unless you're like an insanely large brand, like it is a better use of time to just spend energy trying to drive more new customer sales in the advertising seat.
for sure.
And you can allocate a small sliver of time maybe to some retention stuff for certain brands, but I'm skeptical it's often worth it. I think you can kind of look at return customer sales as a side benefit of running new customer acquisition strategies. Um, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I think it just matters. It is very brand to brand dependent. So I will opt to not go down this
For
rabbit hole
sure.
today.
Okay, so let's talk now about the formula, right? Like how do we calculate new customer contribution margin dollars?
Yeah. So back to what you said earlier, basically net sales, and you're taking out your landed cogs, logistics, shipping costs, and then your merchant payment gateway, credit card fees or whatever. And you're subtracting ad spend from that, and then you have first time customer contribution margin. Essentially, what I suggest is generally you assign the cost of ads to the first time customer line, and you just don't assign it to the return customer line. I feel like some
Exactly.
people would disagree with me on that, but I just think that's the most productive way to do it for 90 something percent of brands.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the way we do it at Free to Grow. And like, so essentially what you have is new customer sales, maybe in a slightly simpler format. Let's say you've taken all your variable costs and you've converted them to percentages of revenue, right? New customer contribution margin ends up being new customer sales times your margin before ads equals margin dollars before ads. And then you subtract all of your ad spend for that period and you get new customer contribution margin. Returning customer ends up being the exact same thing, but returning customer sales times your margin percentage before ads, and you don't subtract ads because you allocated it all to new customers. What's key though is when you start looking at this on a time series every single month, and you start looking at how ad spend, the correlation between ad spend, new customer profit in absolute dollars for a month, and then returning customer profit in absolute dollars for a given month, and you start seeing those trends on a month to month basis, for me, that's really where the light bulb turns off of the whole like, should I be playing the game where I lose money on new customers or not? We have a brand that we work with. It has just like incredible LTV velocity and just retention. Even after month 12, people just stay on this subscription forever. It's crazy. When you graph monthly contribution margin dollars for new versus returning on like this time series, you see they keep scaling ad spend, so they keep losing more money in absolute dollars every month on new customers. So that trend is like this. But when you look at their returning customer profitability, it's like this, way steeper. It's like it's going up so fast. And so you can just see before your eyes that even though this brand is losing more and more money on new customers, they're making more and more money on returning customers at a faster rate. And that right there is the visual representation of the whole LTV to CAC play. You know,
I
it's
find it so funny when you come across like like some brands can like do well like a 1.0 ROAS on new customers, and then sometimes you'll find like the occasional Unicorn, it's like 0.5. Oh, I'll take a 0.5 all day. And I like those. Those brands are great for advertisers.
Totally. Well, I mean, and this comes back to I won't go down a rabbit hole on this. This is like a whole nother episode, but I recently did this LinkedIn post that ruffled a lot of feathers. It's true for a lot of brands. It's not true for every brand, but what I see, brands are always coming to me and saying, Jon, how can I scale fast and profitably? As you've heard me talk about on the show before, it's like what I call like having your cake and eating it too in the e-com world. I grow fast and profitably. You can have one of those without the other quite commonly, and I'd say a whole lot easier, generally speaking, than to do both of them. And the brands that I have seen after having the benefit of working with dozens and dozens, the brands that I see that can scale really fast and profitably have the ability to let their CAC go up really fast and still be profitable. Or like you say, have a low new customer ROAS, right?
Yeah, and usually those I should also say usually I think most brands optimize on ROAS. The high LTV brands often optimize on CAC to LTV, but I largely agree with that entire concept. And I think that like one of the downsides to the high LTV brands is if you lose too much on first order and the payback is 6-7 months, that actually can hurt your ability to scale super fast. Like most of the brands I can think of that went from like 0 to 8 figures or whatever super fast, they're actually often the brands that don't have great LTV. But often, sometimes those brands are not the most durable businesses.
Totally.
The ones that are often the most durable are the high LTVs. Not always, but normally. And the best high LTV brands are the ones whose LTVs are so crazy that the payback is really quick. And you can do both, where you have super durable revenue. The payback's so good that you can kind of plot that course of how fast you scale losses on the front end with how fast those losses get recouped and then generate profits. And you can have some pretty crazy high growth. Like I'm talking like 100% plus year over year growth with high LTV brands. And that's often not sustainable. But like at certain sizes of scale, like when you see those brands, I know you and I both get so excited about those because it's like, wow, these metrics are just like so good.
We have one mutual client where I saw I did their new versus returning customer analysis in their CFO audit and their CAC to LTV, and I was like, you need to scale ad spend faster, much faster, much faster. Yeah, fastish. But yeah. But you know what they have is they turn a profit on a losing new customer really quickly, but then people just are retained for 12, 18 plus months. So that like that, they get a cohort, they lose money on a cohort, they get that cohort to profitability in just a couple months, but then the strong retention for like years afterwards, it just
crazy.
stacks. And it's just like, it starts. And what that does is it just continuously, as long as that retention doesn't get jacked up, you just have more and more that you can potentially plow into losing on new customers. And you just start this crazy virtuous cycle. So anyways, we have to get back to step-by-step calculating marketing profitability metrics, CAC, CPA. What does it stand for and how do we calculate it?
Cost of acquiring a customer or cost per acquisition. Usually that's going to be like MCAC or NCPA in some platforms, so new customer cost of acquisition. And that is basically just taking your total ad spend and dividing it by the number of new customers acquired overall or by a specific channel. Oftentimes, CAC is a more high up metric when thinking about brands who are optimizing for CAC to LTV. Because if you're one of those businesses that lose on acquisition, you're going to kind of be optimizing in a way for a negative first order outcome. And that's going to be in relation to CAC based off of some expectation of LTV over time.
Let's look at this really quick from the standpoint of a brand that doesn't have strong LTV, so they're new customer dominant and can't afford to lose money on acquiring a new customer. One thing we do on the CFO side that's really helpful for these brands is we plot out CAC, but to us, CAC is for new customers. But anyways, we plot out CAC.
It's just marketing lingo because of like Facebook and Google. It's cost per result or cost per acquisition. And it's like it drills into people that you can CAC. You can have a CAC for a return customer.
Totally.
I think probably needs its own acronym, but I don't want another acronym.
But yeah, yeah. So CAC, we will plot it out monthly, right, at different ad spend levels, so that one, we can see the correlation of ad spend going up and CAC going up. Ad spend coming down, CAC coming down, and we can show the brand your CAC goes up as you increase ad spend, which not all brands believe that, believe it or not. But that's one thing. But then the other thing is you can plot that monthly CAC against your gross, your margin dollars per new customer order on a
Yeah.
monthly basis. And you can start to see like I was doing this for a brand the other day. They have $60 in margin before CAC, right? And I was showing them as they double ad spend, their CAC had gone from like $15 to $30. And I was like, okay, so look, your margin per order on new customers has been squeezed. The question I have for you guys is like, have we thought about compressing this delta between margin dollars before CAC and this rising CAC? Have we thought about when that goes to zero? And then what are we going to do? Because we don't have any LTV. And so a lot of brands actually are not doing a great job of tracking how close they're getting to that point where new customers turn a zero profit as they scale, and they haven't gotten out in front of what they have to do to keep that from being an issue.
I think that it's important for founders to understand that principle that as you spend more, your CAC goes up. But I also think you should be fighting that reality as hard as you can by actually giving things to the marketing team to hopefully allow them to not follow that trend, i.e., new products, new markets, but mostly new products, new products, new products, new products. Think of it as like this: for each successful product you have, there is some relationship between new customer ROAS and ad spend, and that will that will exist over time, and that curve will exist. Hopefully the attrition isn't that high and you have a really big TAM, but regardless it will exist to some degree, and you have to have other bets on the table. And I think that, you know it's a balance. Like, it's accepting it, it's going to happen, but what can you do about it? And the answer is usually not media buying. Maybe it's a little bit creative, but it's usually more so more products and better offers.
So let's talk next about LTV. This gets thrown around all the time. It is misdefined, I think, more often than it's defined properly, in my opinion. 9 times out of 10, when a brand comes to me and says their LTV is X number, like their 90-day LTV, it's actually their 90-day, what we call LTR, lifetime revenue, not LTV. Dylan, what's the difference between LTV, lifetime value, and lifetime revenue, and why is it so important?
Like, revenue to some degree matters, but what matters more is contribution margin. So if you spend $30 to acquire a customer, your LTV could be $50, but that's kind of irrelevant if your margins are only 50%, because then your lifetime contribution margin is $25. You're not making money. It's a $5 spread. What you care about is the profit dollars in relation to your CAC, because that's how you actually measure if and when you're getting paid back, and then if and when you're making XYZ on a profit over time from there. I think most reporting tools, I don't think they use LTR. I think they all generally use LTV for the most part. But they're reporting on lifetime revenue, not lifetime contribution margin. So when you look at those, you have to basically take your variable margin and adjust to understand what the profit is on that, not just the revenue, because the profit is what actually pays you back on that CAC.
What platforms call LTV in a cohort model, it's actually lifetime revenue. We use lifetime revenue as CFOs to help our brands differentiate, but that's not what you're going to hear most people say. I would venture to say no one else is really saying that. But we just do it as a point of clarity from a communication standpoint. We will export cohort data and multiply it by your margin before ads, right? So let's say it's 50%. All those numbers in the cohort model get multiplied by 50%, and then we'll line up for each cohort what the CAC was for that particular cohort. And what you end up getting is at any point in time when you go across that cohort model and you see lifetime value in margin dollars, you subtract the CAC for that cohort. And as of that month, that's how profitable you are per customer in that particular cohort. That's the only way to assess what month are you break even and or profitable on a given cohort, is to re-express LTV in margin dollars and then subtract the CAC. So this one is super key to get right. My buddy Ryan Rouse, when I had him on my other podcast a while ago, he was like, hey, listen, measuring LTV and revenue is not useless, but let's be clear about what it is. It's not a profitability metric. It is a retention metric. You can measure retention, right, by measuring accumulated revenue dollars, but you cannot measure profitability with that as LTV. This was like, I think pretty to the point and practical about like the 4 or 5 key metrics that both of our firms use to analyze marketing profitability. Are there any final thoughts you have, Dylan, about like why using these metrics in totality, like why this all really matters?
Your goal is to achieve a business outcome. It's usually not to achieve a ROAS outcome on Facebook or TikTok or whatever. And setting these as the standard that you're going towards allows the entire team to rally behind trying to achieve those metrics. So it's almost like thinking of it in like the hierarchy of metrics, what matters most. And I guess the one we didn't really add into here is cash flow. And that's like another consideration in all of this. But without getting into those weeds, because it's almost like a different kind of consideration, or and the cash flow sometimes maybe higher or lower in the list. I think that like that is what you want to communicate to the team is like for this upcoming period, these are the core metrics we're tracking. This is why this is the most important. And we want to make sure that everyone's moving towards that with what they're doing.
I didn't always measure marketing profitability this way. I've been in the ecom world for, the more than a decade. I feel very strongly that the 5 metrics that we covered here today, absolute contribution margin, new customer contribution margin, returning customer contribution margin, CAC, and LTV measured in margin dollars, these are KPIs that actually have a connection to the profitability at a customer level. And in reality, if you look at the aggregate contribution margin accumulation in your business every single month, all it is a stacking of customer level profitability, right? And so these help you cut to the core of different groups of customers and how profitable they are. And so if you can track these at this level of granularity, then they should stack up to a profitable month or a profitable quarter or a profitable year. So I hope this was helpful. If you need help calculating any of these, you can hit me or Dylan up and we'd be happy to talk to you for a whole nother hour about this, I'm sure. But seriously, this is a good one. And I think that's a wrap.